All right, welcome to this edition of the Native News Update. I'm your host for today's program, Paul Demain. Many of the stories and information we do here today can be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com, where your online membership or subscription support helps the development of this television station. Here's the news for the day from the Associated Press and other Native American news sources. A Hayes, Montana man has been convicted of deliberate homicide in the November 2006 death of a North Dakota man. A district court jury returned with its verdict against James Main Jr. last week. Prosecutors say Main and Lloyd Kevelstead of Minot, North Dakota, got into a fight about Christopher Columbus and the American Indian movement at a party the day after Thanksgiving in 2006. An autopsy determined Kevelstead had been beaten and strangled. Melissa Snow of Havre, Montana, has already pled guilty to tampering with evidence for cleaning up Kevelstead's blood from the carpet in her house. Another defendant, Jim Norquay Jr. of Havre, was found guilty last November of murder and tampering with evidence in Kevelstead's death. His sentencing is scheduled for March 16th of this year. A former pharmacist for the Chickasaw Nation Health System faces a March 2nd trial on federal embezzlement charges alleging he stole thousands of dollars in medication from the tribe's pharmacy. The charges against Hugh Edward Work, 34, stem from an inquiry by the State Pharmacy Board, Chickasaw Light Horse Police, and the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. The Lindsay resident was arrested January 10, 2008, while leaving a tribally owned pharmacy in Ada, Oklahoma. He was carrying a sack of narcotics that belonged to the pharmacy, and investigators found narcotics scattered throughout his car, according to court records. At his home, various medications, narcotics, and other inventory that belonged to the pharmacy, along with marijuana, were discovered, according to the court records as well. Authorities allege Work also is linked to the 2004 sale of $100,000 worth of drugs stolen from the Chickasaw Nation Health System and sold for $25,000 to a former Oklahoma pharmacist. Crow Tribal Chairman Carl Venn, who sought to improve the lives of residents on the Crow Reservation, has passed on of natural causes. He was 62 years old. The Bighorn County Sheriff's Office issued a statement saying Venn was found this last Sunday in his sister's home. The statement said he apparently passed away during his sleep. No foul play was evident or is considered to be a part of the case at the time. Venn was serving his second full term as chairman of the Crow tribe. He took the office in 2002 after former chairman Clifford Birding Ground resigned and was then elected to a full term in the year 2004 and subsequently re-elected last year. A deal that will give the state a slice of revenue from a planned tribal casino southwest of Grand Rapids, Michigan, was approved by the Michigan Senate recently over the objections from Republicans opposed to gambling. The vote came less than 2 weeks after the federal government put 147 acres of land into trust for the casino in Allegheny County's Wayland Township. A 2007 compact negotiated by Governor Jennifer Granholm and the Machi-Benash Wish Band of Potawatomi passed on a voice vote in the Senate. The tribe is also known as the Gun Lake Tribe. Though an official vote tally was not recorded, at least 9 Republicans in the 37-member GOP-led chamber stood up after the vote to oppose the casino. Michigan will have 24 casinos once the Gun Lake Casino and another in Battle Creek are built later this year. A state judge is reserving a decision on 2 pivotal motions in the Cayuga Nation cigarette tax case that's been ongoing over the last couple months. Cayuga and Seneca counties are seeking a court order to temporarily ban the Cayuga from selling tax-free cigarettes at their lakeside trading stores in Union Springs and Seneca Falls. Meanwhile, the Cayuga want the court to force the counties to return 17,600 cartons of unstamped cigarettes, computers, and business records that were seized from the nation's stores in a November 25th tax raid. Judge Kenneth Fisher says he will rule on the motions by late February. County officials say the stores are violating state law by selling cigarettes without charging the required tax and owe over $485,000 in state excise taxes. The nation's stores reopened during January of this year. Montana wildlife officials are seeking public comment on a proposal to relocate several dozen Yellowstone National Park bison to a reservation in Wyoming. The 41 bison will go to the northern Arapahoe's Wind River Reservation in early April. The animals have been held in a quarantine facility north of Yellowstone for over 4 years to make sure they're not carrying the livestock disease brucellosis. Last winter, government and civilian hunters killed 1,601 migrating bison to guard against transmissions of the disease to livestock. A bill pending, introduced by Montana legislature by Republican Senator John Brendan, will block the quarantine animals' relocation. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Administrator Ken McDonald said the northern Arapaho want to let the herd expand to 300 animals and eventually distribute bison to other reservations or public lands. Tribal officials from the Fort Peck and Fort Belknap reservations also have submitted proposals to take bison. Fish and Wildlife and Parks will take comment on the proposal through March 13th of next month. A proposal to let voters decide if South Dakota's constitution should declare English the state's official language died in the Senate. Senators voted 20-14 on February 12th to kill SJR 2, which proposed a constitutional amendment making English the state's official language. If the provision were in the Constitution, no state or local government could adopt a law, ordinance, or rule that required the use of any other language but English. Senator Larry Roden sponsored the proposal. He said having a common language is a large part of what has united the nation. I think we all realize America is a melting pot of diversity, Roden said. The proposed amendment included a provision that said nothing could restrict the use of Lakota, Dakota, or Nakota language by American Indians. That failed to impress Senator Jim Bradford, Republican from the Pine Ridge Reservation. By the way, that melting pot you're talking about, you wouldn't have a pot if it weren't for Native Americans, Bradford said. A 32-page narrative is now in the Edina, Minnesota home of 25-year-old Libby Holden and her family. The document is a simple-looking binder of legal-size paper with red margins on both sides of the sheets. Some of the cream-colored pages are a little tattered at the edges. Holden said her great-grandmother typed out the oral history nearly 100 years ago. The front page says, transcript of the pictorial history of the Sioux Nation as kept by the White Horse family, told by Chief Whitehorse of the Whitehorse Station, Cheyenne River Indian Reservation, South Dakota, on September 8, 1910, Holden said. The neatly typed pages document more than a century of history and culture of the Lakota, known to white settlers as the Sioux at the time. It starts with the year 1790. It's part of a Lakota oral history tradition known as the Winter Count. Each year is described by a significant event. In the White Horse narrative, the entry for some years is just a few words. This sort of first-hand history is what makes the White Horse document so valuable. But after Holden's great-grandmother typed it out in 1910, it seems to have disappeared. Holden said her grandmother, who inherited the oral history, never spoke about it. It's possible she never knew she had the document. When she died, her possessions were stored at the family's printing company where they were recently found. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank our underwriters for helping with this broadcast. Join again with us soon to see what's going on around Indian Country.